Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 16, Episode 91. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora. SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Monday. Steelers Nation officially closed the book on the 2025-2026 NFL season. Super Bowl 60 held last night, and the Seattle Seahawks are champions of the world, dominating the Super Bowl in a 29-13 win over the New England Patriots. That Seahawks defense for real, harassing Drake May the entire night. Defensive touchdown late to seal it, but great game overall. Running back Kenneth Walker, the MVP. So Seattle caps off a fantastic season, hoisting the Lombardi. Dave, how you doing?
All right, happy Monday. It is officially official that we are in the off season now. So goodbye to the 2025 NFL season, and yeah, I think a little over a month today the legal tampering period starts. Obviously, a couple of weeks from now, the NFL scouting combine. That's what we're going to be gearing up for next year, and in the next couple of weeks, we'll try to learn and talk about several players in this draft class, a little more than what we know now, coming out of both the All-Star games, obviously, and I think on Wednesday we're going to try to get the group of people together that went out to both Frisco, Texas, and Mobile, Alabama, for the All-Star games on the show on Wednesday, and kind of get some good conversation going about players in this year's draft class as well too. So what 10 years from now will we have to think back, hey, who do you remember who played in Super Bowl 60? Is that kind of the lasting, will there be a lasting kind of memory or memories from this game?
If there is going to be a memory and everything sort of fades to time, and this was not one of the all-time classic games, Seattle really held serve in this one throughout, but that Seahawks defense, man, was just unbelievable. And where that unit ranks, compared to other Super Bowl champs, I'm not sure, but it sure feels up there. Not just the front, the secondary, the play calling, the aggressive corner blitzes. Witherspoon was successful all night pressuring Drake May. The Patriots really had no answer for the coverage rotations, the match coverage, and Seattle's defense, just led by a defensive-minded head coach and Mike Macdonald, really took it to the Patriots. So in this world of offensive gurus and whiz kids and who's the next Sean McVay, maybe the conversation shifts to who's the next Mike Macdonald.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, we went into this knowing that this was probably going to be a defensive-minded Super Bowl with both these teams, and knowing that Seattle ended the regular season with the really and throughout the season had the top defense in the league, but their adjusted net yards per passing attempt number was lowest in the league. They had the largest differential in that stat as well too, between offensive and defense. We went into this kind of wondering if the Patriots, because of the schedule that they had played throughout the season, and having to face a defense such as the Seahawks, not effectively not having to do so all season, and we kind of left this at this would be the toughest game that the New England Patriots would have to play all season, and that definitely was the case. They that defense limit held Drake May to a 4.12 adjusted net yards per passing attempt number, and if not for like two passes in the fourth quarter there, right after they went down, I think 19-0. If not for those two passes, one of those being the touchdown pass to Mac Hollins there, his number wouldn't even had been that high. You can't turn the football over three times in the game, not get any takeaways, and be like they were on third down in this game, and Seattle had them had that offense in a blender most of the night, specifically with more so a four-man rush, and then when they did blitz, they did a good job of coming off the edges and kind of confusing Drake May, and then the few opportunities that I felt that Drake May had an opportunity to hold on to football and make some plays. He was a lot of times he was inaccurate with some passes there, and really I thought he probably only made about what 3 or 4 good throws on the night. I thought he used his legs okay a couple of times to get some first downs there, but this game obviously should be remembered for the play of the Seahawks defense. And once again, you take the football away 3 times the way that they did. You sack them. What they have officially 7 sacks in the game.
6. That
6.
last the defensive touchdown, I think, was ruled an interception, maybe whatever the ruling
Oh,
was. It
okay.
was initially a sack, but then that was taken away, I believe.
All right. And then yeah, I mean, and then I thought offensively the Seahawks did enough. They ran the ball fairly effectively with Kenneth Walker, specifically on the outside, on the edges. There, the Patriots defense did kind of what you wanted them to do, at least limit them without touchdowns early in the game, and only gave up the 4. Look, I think a lot of people forget that this was a 9-0 game, I think, at halftime, and a 12-0 game going into the fourth quarter, right? And yeah, that's 2 scores, and it did it did feel like 12 would be
Yeah,
enough.
it never
Uh,
felt close.
and obviously the Patriots ended up scoring 13, but they for the most part, I think the Patriots, held up their end of the deal until obviously later on in the game there. But the Patriots just could not get anything going on offense whatsoever. And even though they finished 6 of 15 on third down, I think they were mostly in the 20% range for most of the game up until the fourth quarter. And the Seahawks weren't that much better on third down. When you got a defense like that, you can be a little bit more conservative offensively, the way that they were. You didn't get big games, obviously, from Njigba or really anybody else not named, maybe Cooper Kupp or A.J. Barner, but even those 2 guys combined for just 10 catches. But a lot of your offense ran through Kenneth Walker, well over 100 total yards from scrimmage. I thought he was very, if you can't give a MVP to a team defense, which why can't you? But if you were not going to go that way, with like a team MVP of a Super Bowl being the defense, then I thought Kenneth Walker was the proper choice there, because he had what do you have 26 and over 150 total yards from scrimmage and some nice runs in there, and really helped keep the Seahawks ahead of the chains. So that's what I got on that.
The one aspect of this game that probably will be forgotten to time is Seattle's special teams. And my usual
Mhm.
mantra there is it doesn't always win you games, but it can certainly lose you games. I think in this case, it actively won Seattle games. The 5 field goals by Jason Myers, that's a Super Bowl record. Now, no kick was especially difficult, all within 41 yards, but still never take those things for granted, especially in a Super Bowl with the pressure on and rush teams are scheming up every little advantage they can with the extra time to prepare. And then man, that punter, Michael Dixon, was fantastic. What averaged 48 yards gross, long of 55, multiple, not just pinned inside the 20, but inside the 10, the 5-yard line. That last punt on that all-out rush, got the ball off quickly, 2-second punt, and still pinned it deep. I mean, you had New England starting out of their end zone on multiple possessions. So talk about the value of special teams, what it can offer you. Seattle showed that in spades last night.
Yeah, good point on that, and he did punt very well. Now, one of those I thought probably should have been fielded there, but it wasn't, and bounced around, and the coverage team were great overall for Seattle as well too. And it kind of felt like the Patriots were like, okay, let's just hang around. hang around. We're only down 9-0 at halftime, 12-0 through the third quarter. If we keep hanging around and don't take too many chances on the offensive side of football, maybe Sam Darnold will give us one or two here. Well, Sam Darnold didn't. Even though didn't he lead in interceptions? Darnold in throwing interceptions this year or close to it.
Did he? Let me look. He had 14. It wasn't the NFL lead, but he might not
Okay.
have been far off.
All right, but maybe with that, maybe some fumbles and all like that. But anyway, they did not give the football away. The Seahawks didn't, and you get Drake May in situations. The Patriots did not want to get into a game where they were down like they were 19-0 to have to start throwing the football in the fourth quarter to win the game. And once it got to that point, the Seahawks were even able to pin their ears back even more. Not that they needed to be able to in this game, and just let things kind of go up underneath. And kind of amazing to look back now after the game was over. Drake May threw for 295 yards in this game. The problem is that I think most of that came in the fourth quarter. Really kind of garbage, kind of catch up time there, and obviously the two interceptions were crucial. One of those ended up in the end zone on a defensive touchdown, and he was just under pressure all night. And the Patriots are going to have to take a hard look at what they want to do with Will Campbell over there on the left side. And he was a guy going into the draft that we talked a lot about the arm length. Is this a guy? Can this guy be the next? Who was the guy in Los Angeles with the Chargers? Slater, right?
Rashawn Slater, yes.
Yeah, a lot of people talked about whether or not he, had the ability to stay outside or not. But the same kind of conversations I think went into the draft with Will Campbell there. And boy, the amount of pressures and all that he allowed in that game last night, they really had him in the blender. And you go back now to the talk. I think the main talking points for the Patriots coming out of this one is, does Will Campbell indeed belong inside at guard? Like I think a lot of us kind of wondered was the case. I went back and looked at our own site and our own draft profile on Will Campbell last year that I believe Nick Costco did for the site. And why won't it load here? But in so many words, I think he left it up. Let me see. Wait, exit page. I don't know why it went reload.
Do you have 70,000 tabs open again? Is that slowing you down here?
Yeah.
Do you shut your computer off at night, or do you?
No, I leave it on. I leave it
See,
on.
that's bad. You gotta shut it. You gotta shut it off and let it actually. Do you even put it in sleep mode, or you just walk away and go to bed?
I just let it.
Dave, oh my
stay
God,
up
what
on it.
computer do you have? If I have more than 5 tabs open
Man,
in
I
Chrome, it freaks
gotta.
out and shuts down.
Now I am on my second hard drive on this Dell, but it's a Dell all-in-one, and now I use an external hard drive, and this has been a great computer for me. And now I got tons of RAM in there. I think I got like 32 megs of RAM or something like that in there that I've upgraded over the years. All right, here's what Nate Costco wrote about Will Campbell on his profile last year. He says, I'm projecting Will Campbell as a guard due to his short arm length and inability to win consistently in 1-versus-1 pass protection on the edge. As a guard, he will provide a veteran presence with a strong IQ and passion to win. Pairing that with his amazing play strength in the run game, explosiveness to pull and climb to the second level will lead to a successful run scheme. Campbell still needs to improve his pad level and hand placement, but those issues are coachable. If you can hone in the ability to always be on the attack first, I believe he could be a non-replaceable starting guard on a good offensive line. He gave him a day one, obviously draft grade and a year one quality starter. And look, can you circle the one game for Will Campbell and make that, the what you're going to do with them and the judgment off that? Technically probably not, but then again, I think you look back at kind of the competition and the pass rush that the Patriots faced a lot of the season there. I think they, and the the narrative going into the offseason is, that the Patriots do need to take a long, hard look at Will Campbell, whether or not they think he can survive out there at left tackle, whether or not he needs to go inside. And if he needs to go inside, then they're going to have to obviously look for a new starting left tackle.
And it becomes a lot harder to find that guy when you're picking 31st in the draft and the O-line tax is very real in free agency. Campbell had struggled in the entire postseason. This was not just about one Super Bowl game. He had struggled against Denver and their strong rush, and I think prior, as well. Houston, I think he had his issues. Some really good teams and pass rushes, obviously, but those are going to be the test of a franchise left tackle, and Campbell certainly did not pass it this first time through, but he's a rookie, and give him some time to work on his technique, and we'll see what the plan is going forward for Pittsburgh, Dave. And it's such a trite thing. I know we talk about end of each year after every Super Bowl, but any takeaways the Steelers can take from this Super Bowl, Seattle's win, that they can apply to their team going forward?
The only thing, and I thought about this last night as well, too, and I posed the question. Again, we had kind of the talk the other day about, okay, will the Steelers win or at least be in the Super Bowl in the next 5 or even 10 years? And I think 5 is the better kind of window to look at, because obviously we're talking about Mike McCarthy signing a 5-year deal and, everything kind of related to that. But if you want to look immediately even to this next 2026 season, if the Steelers are going to compete and make any kind of run on this, it feels like it needs to be sort of more along the lines of the Seattle method of, man, how good can you get that defense in one off season, and can you at least get slightly above average play out of the quarterback position? Now, look, I don't want to take anything away from Sam Darnold, but he was a good fit there. And when you have a defense playing like that Seattle defense did, this season, and take the takeaways that they had and all like that, it loosens kind of the magnification, it feels like, on the quarterback position. And Seattle was able to run the ball with that two-headed monster most of the season with Walker and Charbonnet there. So if the Steelers hope to have any chance of not only winning their division, which I think that the talk about potentially winning the division will all come down to, can the Steelers go 4-2 within their division? I think there'll probably be enough talent, especially if you get, if you end up getting Aaron Rodgers back and maybe add, an offensive piece or two on that side of football, they're going to be in some games once again. Do I think this is a team that can win 11, 12, 13 games? No. Can they? If you get the right pieces in there and they play up to standards, can they win 9 or 10 games again and get in the playoffs? Potentially, yes. But for them to make any sort of run in the playoffs in 2026, we would have to be talking about this defense having, an adjusted net yards per passing attempt number of probably sub 5.5, if we're being honest here. At the very least sub 5.6. And can they get there? We'll see. But I mean, this isn't going to be a Steelers team that makes their hay. It doesn't feel like offensively, and at least not through the offensive passing game. So if there's any model that or anything that we learned, is that, man, a great defense like the Seahawks can certainly take you all the way, especially if you have at least a half comparable quarterback and offensive running game.
I guess the problem is Pittsburgh had been trying to build that for the last decade and couldn't put that kind of coalition together. Or when they did, the offense was just so lackluster, there just was no chance to get over the hump. 2019 being a good example. You had an elite defense, I would argue, and of course without Ben, you had an offense that just could not do anything to support yourself. Seattle was still number 3 scoring offense this year, number 8 in yardage on offense, and so it still really was a strong offense across the board. I know Seattle brought a lot of blitzes in this game, some of those corner blitzes off the boundary with Witherspoon and others, but when it came down to it, most of their production came through those 4-man rushes. Look at the Eagles last year, the similar thing. And so when you can rush 4 and drop 7, man, that is the perfect recipe, because you're getting coverage, you're getting rush, and you're getting heat on the quarterback. So Pittsburgh just has to continue to stay strong up front. Obviously, the Reg guys should, and you would expect them to be able to produce, but still want to see TJ Watt bounce back, want to see Highsmith continue to build, Herbig, Sawyer, etc. Can you find another pass rushing defensive tackle? I think Benton had a big step forward last year. Harmon, though, has to show more as a rusher. Cam Heyward, the sacks regressed last year. The pass rush production was still good, but maybe a little bit of decline there. The run defense stayed, I think, steady and was elite. The pass rush might have come down a little bit. So can you find another sort of real good pass rusher for this team? And of course, you're still trying to play good run defense, which has not been a goal they've achieved consistently enough these last 2 years. So a lot of competing factors, but when you can rush 4, drop 7, that is the sweet spot for a defense.
And we just talked about the where their numbers need to be defensively. They were 6.2. The Steelers were in that just a net yards per passing attempt stat last year, which put them kind of right there in the middle of the NFL. And the Seahawks' final regular season number was 4.5. That's a big gap right there. And we just talked about, can they get like 5, 6 or lower? The
What was
Rams,
Seattle's offense in that stat? What was their
7.3, which was, we talk all the time, and if you can get above 7, you've done something, especially if you have a defense that's, complementary, very complementary, and which obviously the Seattle had with a number of 4.5. So it wasn't like they were, living and dying on their offense to win them some games this year. The defense was, just out of sight. When's the next time that we might see a number? The Texans were right there, 4.6. The Texans obviously didn't have good enough quarterback play or offensive play once they got into the playoffs. Defense can carry you quite a ways, and at some point, obviously throughout the season, you're going to need offense to pick up that side of the ball. But when you got a defense that can consistently for a full season post up a number like they did defensively, and if your offense is putting up, now look, was the offense able to post a 7.3 number for the Seahawks because of obviously some of the turnovers and shorter fields and all like that that the defense provided them? Yeah, I think so. But long story short here is that if the Steelers are going to make any hay and finally get over the hump of winning a playoff game at a minimum in 2026, their defense has got to get a lot better than it's been the last couple of seasons here. And that's really their only hope, because I don't think, especially if you go in with Aaron Rodgers, specifically at the quarterback. 7.3. I know Aaron Rodgers has had better seasons in the past here, but he is older, and I know you got new offensive people coming in here, and Mike McCarthy and all offensive minded head coach and everything that goes along with that. But 7.3. If this offense got to a 7.0 number, I think it would be dramatic increase for them overall, coming off of a season that they were 6.1. And I know 0.9 doesn't seem like all that much, but over a 17 regular game season, it is. So, and even if you get to that point with Aaron Rodgers and get into the playoff, you're talking about a 1-year fix once again for this Steelers team. More than likely not going to end up in even an AFC championship game season here. And the big onus on Mike McCarthy, as we all know, and the Steelers as a whole right now, is, can they get their next franchise quarterback sooner rather than later? If we're talking another 3 years, this team's still looking for a franchise quarterback, then I think it's obviously easy to say that the Steelers probably aren't going to be playing in the Super Bowl in the next 5 years.
Last stat on Seattle and their impressive Super Bowl run: in their 3 playoff games, of course, they were the number 1 seed, so had the wild card week bye, but in the divisional, championship, and Super Bowl rounds combined, 0 turnovers. Did not turn the ball over once in 3 postseason games. And I know it is so obvious and so clear, but you take care of the football, you don't beat yourself, you're going to give yourself a chance to win virtually every single game in the NFL, regular season, postseason, whatever the case is. And Seattle did that. They forced 7 turnovers themselves, including 3 against New England. That is great, fundamental, disciplined football. Not many penalties last night either. I don't think the first penalty in the entire game took a while, I think, to be flagged. Let's see the final total on that.
And the first
Seattle,
one was a false start by Campbell, I think, wasn't it?
right? I think on third down, yeah, Seattle 4 for 25, New England 3 for 25. So a lot of good discipline there. I think there was one scrum on the sideline where there maybe should have been a flag that was thrown that was missed. I didn't catch the whole sequence there, but Seattle, they played clean, they played fundamental, they did that throughout the postseason, and they are deservedly, clearly the best team in the NFL this season, and rightfully Super Bowl champs.
Yeah. Now, look, technically, New England won the explosive play battle, 5-4. But four of those explosive plays from New England came in the fourth quarter. And of their 10 longest plays that New England had in the game, which ranged from 35 yards to 11 yards, all but two of them came in the fourth quarter. So, and at that point, because of the lead that that Seattle was just like, don't give up the home run at that point. So, it probably wasn't a surprise that Seattle was finally able to move the ball in a little bit. In other words, New England had their longest plays. The more relaxed Seattle could be on defense because of having the lead that they had, and obviously building it up to 19-0 at one point there.
Right, yeah, New England, really the first 3 quarters, their offense did nothing. Didn't they go basically 2 quarters without a first down? I mean, they were just punting, I think, their first 5, 6 opening possessions in this one and ended up punting, I don't know, almost 10 times in this game. And when they weren't punting, they were turning the football over. So, yeah, Seattle, dominant, well-deserved.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, if you're able to get the pass rush that Seattle was able to get with mostly using 4 guys, that leaves a lot in the back end. They definitely have the pieces in that back end to cover. Now, look, you want to talk about if you want to talk about a few standouts, at least for the Patriots. I mean, they got a fine corner over there in Christian Gonzalez, right?
He might have been the best player on that field last night.
Right. If not for him, they probably give up a couple more scores in that game there. So you got a good piece on defense, and I thought defensively overall they played okay. They couldn't. They Mike Vrabel talked, I think, leading up to the game about can't give up the edge, and they unfortunately gave up the edge to Kenneth Walker quite a bit in this game. But they do have a defense, obviously, to build around still and continue to get better on that side of football. But now they got to figure out what they need to do to get more consistency on offense there.
Yeah, so these teams will be able to go in the offseason. Seattle will have the heavy crown of being the champs everyone's going to be gunning for in a very competitive NFC West, and New England will try to fix some things. Their defense, like you said, played well. They were bending. They weren't breaking. They held Seattle to 4 field goals through the first 3 quarters. It's hard to really fault the defense for much in this game. Darnold made some great plays out of structure, avoiding a couple sacks. That was a key difference in this one as well. But you got some power rushers up front, Byron Murphy, Derek Hall, some really early round investments. You had the tweet or retweeted some tweet last night of all the draft picks that Seattle used recently to build this Super Bowl winning roster. And of course, Darnold, the free agent, is a clear exception to that. But whether you're talking about Kenneth Walker or Derek Hall or Byron Murphy or Witherspoon or a lot of these guys, these were draft picks. These were developed kind of, again, a more old school model to building this roster that ultimately gets them a Lombardi.
I went back this morning and wanted to look at their 2025 draft class of the Seahawks, and I think the key thing here is that they hit on their first 2 picks. Gray Zabels, absolutely, he's going to be around the league for a long time. A great interior guy, and then Nick Emanwari at safety, obviously, is here to stay and really had a great rookie season as well too. Now their 3rd round pick was Arroyo, the tight end out of Miami, but he only had 15 receptions, I think, during the regular season for 179 yards. Torrey Holton what did he go down with injury wise?
I don't remember on his
I
injury.
mean, he was looking good at the start of the season, right? But I think he still ended up with what 13 catches, 161 yards, and I think mostly he was a touchdown guy during his limited time before he went out and sometime I think in November with an injury there. So and then Outson, I remember us talking about Outs, Robbie Outs, the tight end slash fullback back when the Steelers were preparing for him, and he ended up having a late season. I think he was inactive even for last night's game there. So, he was a good. He was only a fifth round draft pick though, as well. They drafted Jalen. They even had the luxury of getting Jalen or using a pick, I should say, on the quarterback position, Jalen Milroe out of Alabama in the third round. Roddy Mills obviously had a nice sack in that game, a real bull rush, walked the left guard all the way back into Drake May. Roddy Mills, he was the one out of Notre Dame that had that. Didn't he have the knee injury or whatnot?
Yeah,
In
missed the whole
the
playoffs.
in the college playoffs and all. I really like he probably would have been a lot higher draft pick had he not gotten injured there. So even though he didn't have a huge season by the time he got healthy and back in there, he definitely impacted that game last night. I guess where I'm going with this is I think if you look at all the picks, and Seattle had quite a few of them in last year's draft, I think the key takeaway is that they definitely hit on their top two in Grace Zabel and Nick Amawari, and those guys played a huge part in the great season that Seattle had.
Yeah, did anyone have a better top two picks of their class than Seattle? And Zabel and Eman Wari have to go down the list and compare, but it's up there at the least. But it's also not just about the current rookies, because sometimes those guys don't always make the immediate impact, although Zabel and Eman Wari certainly did. But those maybe second or third year guys, look at that 2023 class, Dave. Devin Witherspoon, Jackson Smith and Jigba, their two first round picks, Derek Hall, Zach Charbonnet, and Anthony Bradford. Those were their first 5 picks of the 2023 class. All impactful players this year. Now Charbonnet hurt his knee, did not play in this game, but Witherspoon, JSN did not have an impactful game, but obviously Offensive Player of the Year. Derek Hall, Charbonnet whenever he was healthy, Bradford, 17-game starter this season. You hit on your first 5 picks in big, meaningful ways. Man, if you do that and you find the quarterback, you got a real good chance, and Seattle showed that.
Yeah, and just look, I guess, as a whole, their last 3 drafts of players drafted in the first 2 rounds, just specifically, as you mentioned, go back to 2023, Witherspoon, Smith and Jigba, Derek Hall, and Zach Charbonnet, right? Those were first and second round picks. And then you go to their draft last season, their first round pick was Byron Murphy. And they did not have a second rounder in 2024. And then we already just named off their top 2 in Zabel and Eman Wari. So if you're going to be a team that builds through the draft, you got to hit on these at the very least your top 2 draft picks, and they certainly, or your players drafted in the first 2 rounds. And I think it goes without saying, over the last 3 seasons, they certainly have had great draft picks in the first 2 rounds of drafts.
They built their offensive line to the draft, too. Charles Cross, 2022 first-round pick. Abraham Lucas, 2022 third-round pick. Just mentioned Bradford, 2023 fourth-round pick. So that's what Pittsburgh has done. To their credit, they've built their offensive line and developed those guys through the draft. So if there is something for Pittsburgh to look at with those dozen draft picks they're projected to have to at least begin the offseason and go into the draft with, you saw Seattle draft a bunch of guys this year and utilize those picks well and have a lot of returns and benefits from that. So Pittsburgh can certainly transform its talent of the roster and increase that in a hurry if they can find the right guys, draft them, and coach them up.
And obviously got 12 picks on paper right now, and we obviously don't think they're going to have to make 12 actual picks here. Probably going to end up around 7, 8, or 9 total picks, and you'd like to think that they're going to come out of the top 100 selections in a draft with how many? At least they got 5 on paper right now, right? 5.
Yes, first, second, and 3/3.
All right, so at a minimum, how many players are they going to come out of the top 100 selections with? 3, 4?
I mean, I think you wanna have all these picks. I mean, obviously, if there's a guy that you're dying to trade up for, then so be it, but without there being a clear quarterback name to go move up for, I think you wanna have a lot of picks here, get some youth to this roster, get some talent to this roster, starts building this scheme under the McCarthy vision. I mean, I would say you want probably at least 4 picks. Now, you get in the draft, you just never know how this thing goes. It's hard to predict, but I think you wanna have 4 picks at least on day 1 and day 2 and probably 10 picks total in this class.
All right. We'll see how that plays out. But and not a deep, not one of the best draft classes as a whole, but there's going to be a lot of talent to be had in the top 100 picks.
Yeah, Pittsburgh will need it for sure. All right, Dave, let's move on here. Steelers news, pretty quiet weekend on the Pittsburgh front, kind of the first calm weekend we've had since the playoff loss and all the coaching turnover since. One report from Tom Pelissero came out Sunday morning that Aaron Rodgers' odds of returning to Pittsburgh for 2026 under Mike McCarthy, those odds are, quote, increasing. What do those odds sit at currently? Pelissero did not say what have they increased to. He did not specify, but we can all sort of see the writing on the wall, the tea leaves. Nothing's done until it's done, and I still maintain that Rodgers is certainly no guarantee to come back, but that is the sentiment from Pelissero. The odds are going up.
Yeah, that just feels more reading the tea leaves and speculation as far as that point. You're dealing with a guy like Aaron Rodgers. Uh, you know, and the unpredictability of him overall. But I think everybody would agree, or most people would agree, right now that if Aaron Rodgers is going to play in 2026, the Steelers are easily the team that you could picture him playing for. And I know we've had the conversations about potentially Minnesota, but does he really want to go over there for 1 year, especially when they got the other young quarterback in place of McCarthy, who they still got to figure out. If anything happens, kind of with a veteran quarterback with Minnesota, yeah, like it's easy to connect the dots too, especially when Atlanta's supposed to, I think, cut loose Kirk Cousins for Kirk Cousins to go back on a much cheaper deal back to Minnesota and give them kind of a more experienced safety valve in Kirk Cousins. That to me that makes a lot more sense than Aaron Rodgers going to Minnesota for 1 year to end his career there. So I don't think they have any like sweeping learned anything about Aaron Rodgers. I just think that the national media talking heads are just saying, just look at what the Steelers have done with the coaches that they've had, the Mike McCarthy, the James Campen, a handful of others over there, really making it an attractive situation for Aaron Rodgers to come back at least one more season there. So that's what I think that's mostly about there. Once again, I don't think anybody, any one person, you know, got some sort of inside news on Aaron Rodgers. I think that's more of a tea
Mhm.
leaves probability, hedge your bet type report, if you will.
The spec-reporting we've come to know and sometimes loathe, but that is the latest from Pittsburgh. The more well, maybe not the more interesting question is, but the equally important question is, when will that decision come? Pelissero said ideally before free agency, which is, of course, the ideal date for Pittsburgh, but we just don't know when it will happen. Cam Heyward had a cryptic tweet over the weekend, I think that was Sunday morning, too. It was just him, like a gif of somebody closing a book, and so the easy first thought is, does this mean he's closing a chapter in the NFL and going to call it a career? We just don't know. We know the cryptic tweets from players are always difficult to guess at. What we think they are, what we assume they are, often is proven incorrect. But Cam Hayward still debating his future, was on all the interviews this week and did even pregame show on Sunday and said he had no finality on his decision, but that certainly stirred up the fan base seeing that gif from Cam Hayward.
Yeah, I got no idea what he meant. You obviously don't post something like that without having meaning towards it, and we've seen that in the past from several players and all. I mean, if you got something to say, just say it. You roll back to the whole T.J. Watt peace sign picture from, I guess, what was it? Was that last offseason or season before?
It feels like 8 years ago. That was
Yeah.
this past off
All
season before
right.
his new deal.
All right. I've got no idea. It will be easy to look back after the fact if indeed Cam Heyward decides that he's not going to play, as this being as that gift posting being the moment that he came to the realization that that was going to be it. But heck, I don't know. I've there have been social media cryptic messages that I've read so wrong in the past that I figure it's probably not good to go down that street anymore unless it feels even more certain. I had to watch it a few times to even understand it was actually a book closing. I mean, I did not even kind of put two and two together on that. I mean, it's only the regular season. He obviously posted that before the Super Bowl. Would the man make the decision that quick, especially not knowing officially the status of Aaron Rodgers? And I,
I just
I,
don't know why he wouldn't. Hayward's certainly an articulate guy, has a podcast, all these interviews. He wouldn't just announce his retirement in a GIF on
I
Twitter
would
for us to
think
guess at.
so.
It'd be something a lot more sentimental and meaningful than just, all right, guys, deuces.
I mean, if you're talking about a 4-year player, 5-year player, maybe that's one thing. But yeah, I'd hate to see that. The first inkling of a sign that Cam Heyward made a decision was him posting a book closing gif. I don't feel like that's the case, and I would
Yeah,
hope that it wouldn't come in that form, obviously, at this point of the year. Now, might he ultimately decide to step away? I think
sure.
that's one of the things that we talked about since the season ended, especially since Mike Tomlin stepped down. Was would you have bet your house the moment that Mike Tomlin stepped down that Cam Heyward would be back in 2026? I think that would have been a foolish bet to do that. I still, in my heart of hearts, would think that Cam Heyward, based on things that he said in the past about the whole, wanting to play 3 more years and then 2 more, in other words, play out his current contract now. And you look at the season that he had this past season, he's still doing a good job of warding off father time. But within all that, there comes a time that, people change, especially from one season to the next. And then obviously having the monumental decision by Mike Tomlin to step down. If Mike Tomlin hadn't stepped down, I would feel a lot more confident
Same.
that Cam Heyward be back for his final season. But I do believe it's up in the air right now. And in my heart of hearts, I want to believe that regardless of what his decision ends up being, that it wasn't already made, and the inklings of it being made, being a animated GIF of a book closing.
Also, not a good time to announce that on Super Bowl Sunday when any retirement inclination would be overshadowed by the Super Bowl. I think Heyward understands that timing. Plus, he was just doing coverage literal hours before that. So we'll see. I'm still of the opinion he is more likely to return than not, based on some of the comments he's made over the last week during Super Bowl Radio Row week. But we'll see. Not a guarantee. Another name to watch for.
And look, if this ends up being it for him once again, that's a huge goes without saying, that's a huge role position that the team has to fill on that defensive line, and not an easy one, especially if you're talking about a rookie having to be that guy.
No doubt about it. Jerry Dulac also believing that Heyward will ask for some sort of contract adjustment this offseason. Heyward, during his one interview with Rich Eisen, seemed to downplay that money was the concern. So we'll see. Dulac was not reporting that, just kind of was his feeling based on Heyward's still strong play and what's happened in the past. So something to consider, something to discuss whenever the time comes. Should the time come, if Heyward does return and report for training camp in late July, I guess it'd be late July.
Let's see. What was his roster bonus this past? Yeah, he had a big roster bonus this past off season as well too. We already established that on the last show, and this year the bulk of his money once again is in roster bonus. I don't think they're going to want to roll into training camp and all with him, going through the matter of wanting more money. I would like to at least think and believe that all of his contract stuff will be settled by the time this roster bonus is paid in March. And in other words, not get past the roster bonus date and then us getting into the start of training camp and him slow rolling it or whatnot and saying, yeah, I'd like a little bit more money. Once again, that obviously would not sit well with the fan base, even though he's a guy that I think. I mean, he outplayed his cash value last year, right?
No question.
It feels like so. And this year, the cash value at this point, I think, is a little lower. Now, could the two sides, agree by the middle of March that all right, we'll give you the same deal, quote unquote, as last year about the sack number and the playoff wins and all like that, and of course tying it to percentage of the snaps. Yeah, I could foresee that, but anything more than that, I feels like he's barking up the wrong tree.
Yeah, we'll see where it goes. But first things first, does he want to continue playing? Does he want to come back for another season? That's step one. And so we'll wait for the answer from not just Aaron Rodgers, but Cam Heyward.
Look,
Dave,
I definitely want to know before the draft if he's playing or not, and which way that's going to dictate, and even obviously before that, free agency. And once again, I'm not expecting this team to go hog wild in free agency, especially when it comes to high dollar guys, top of market guys. Now, I think you look back at the whole DK Metcalf thing, that was kind of out of necessity, especially after deciding that they weren't going to move forward with George Pickens and all. But I would like to think that this team really would like to have a decision by Cam Heyward of what he, of not only if he's going to play in 2026 and what it's going to take to get his contract right by the time the draft rolls around.
Yeah, obviously with that March roster bonus, you should know whether or not he wants to play and intends to play by then, and maybe you can get the contract stuff figured out by then. But it's a messy time of year. It's a busy time of year. So how much time will you get to spend on Hayward's contract situation? We shall see. Just a quick note for Super Bowl 61, the initial odds are already out, depending on the outlet and the bookie or the book that you look at. Dave, Pittsburgh's ranging from 60-1 to 100-1 odds. It's certainly kind of bottom third in the NFL. But if there is a silver lining entering the 2025 season, or right after the Super Bowl, I believe it was, the Seahawks and Patriots are both 60-1 odds to win the Super Bowl. And so can Pittsburgh replicate that with their own 60-1 odds? That's kind of one way to squint and be optimistic about that initial listing for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and when you look back at the Seahawks situation, there was a lot of questions about Sam Darnold coming over to be the guy and Geno Smith exiting. Seattle also obviously traded away DK Metcalf. Even though they had a lot of young pieces that we just went over that they added in the draft, there was a lot of kind of question marks concerning them. And then you look at the division that they played in. A lot of people didn't even think they would compete in their own division against the likes of the 49ers and the Rams. And then you look on New England side of the football, you got a new head coach coming in there, and Mike Vrabel. You have Drake May, who showed, only in his, at least in his rookie season, that there was some positives, but you were wondering what kind of step he might be able to make in his second season. So both teams had a lot of question marks heading into the off season, and it's not surprising at this point to look back to say that both those teams were in the neighborhood of 60-1, especially when look at the division that the Patriots played in. Myself included, I thought the Bills were going to be one of the two teams in the Super Bowl last year. I thought unequivocally.
Yeah, what was your pick? What was your Super Bowl preseason pick?
I think it was Bills over Packers or Packers over the Bills.
Okay.
I one of the two. I had Bills versus Packers in the Super Bowl. I know that.
Yeah, I had Niners and Ravens, so big miss there.
All right, so, yeah, look, we'll learn more about every team in the NFL between now and obviously draft day, because free agency will have taken place, and obviously the draft picks and all will have taken place there. I Where do you? I tell you, that's such a large range, and only really one of the places. I think it was what DraftKings had them at 60-1. I think most everybody else, except for BetMGM, I think had them at 80-1. I think predominantly they're going to be considered more to the 100-1, at least at this point of the offseason. I'll ask you: do you put them closer to the 60-1 mark or the 100-1 mark?
I mean, once you get to that point, it all becomes sort of the same long shot, whether you're 60, 80, or 100, but probably more in that 80 to 100, farther than closer. I'll put it that way, Dave.
I guess the biggest question, at least right now where we sit right now, is can this team compete in their own division? Uh, can this team win 4 out of 6 games in their own division and get enough wins outside of that to get to at least 9 or 10 wins
But they do that every year, and here we
sure.
are. This is a team that's won a playoff game in 10 years, so it's hard to even think about Super Bowl because you can't even get to step one of the Super Bowl run.
Well, I mean, can they at least get themselves into the playoffs by, potentially winning their division or
I mean, yeah,
coming up a
yes, but
close
they
second?
they do that every year. That's
Right.
nothing new. It's nothing like that's not easy for them, but it's certainly routine for them.
Right. And then obviously once you get in the tournament, things happen. But
Yeah,
uh
it's a heavy lifting on things happen.
mhm,
They get
mhm.
boat raced by good quarterback play and an offense that just can't put up points.
Right. So yeah, I mean it's not a surprise that we're sitting here talking about them being closer to 101 to win it all right now.
Yeah. All right, Dave, some adjacent Steelers news. The Dallas Cowboys expected to apply the franchise tag on old friend George Pickens. This offseason, the window opens up in about a week or so. That'll be about a
And
20.
that's not news really. I mean that
No,
they make it they frame it to be kind of news, but everybody should have been able to see this coming for quite a while, especially the way this team treated, Parsons and all like that, and the way Jerry Jones does business. And quite honestly, George Pickens would be foolish to sign any deal that's not over the top, above and beyond the franchise tag even before that date. So I know his side is probably been prepping for this all along. It would be a huge upset if it gets to the point and George Pickens is not wearing the franchise tag. It does become into question though. If you got to think George isn't showing up to anything once that tag gets applied, and is this something that works well into the off season? I know people are saying now it could be a tag and trade type situation. You just don't see a lot of those. They sound good in theory, but how many times have we actually seen tag and trade actually end up that way?
sure, it's rare.
And especially when you're dealing with a guy that's had you know, both in between the lines and outside the lines kind of, you know, uh, issues, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, just as your point, the tag is just going to give them time to work out a long-term deal. I think Dallas's intent, they've been pretty clear they want to do a long-term deal. I think something will eventually get done. Is just make sure he can't hit the open market and just kind of extends that timeline to get that long-term extension done, which probably occurs sometime in June or July.
And then the fallout from that is how much more you're going to end up paying him on an average yearly value and guaranteed percentage than you are CD Lamb, who you just locked up. And then the dynamics of he's making more money than me now.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine Pickens on an extension is going to start at no worse than 30 million. I don't forget the exact deal that Lamb got last year, but I assume the Pickens contract, the tag's at 28, so that's your floor, and probably going to put you in that 30 group, which got pretty full last year with all the deals that got done with Lamb and Chase, and of course Pittsburgh's own DK Metcalf.
Yeah, and the drop off from Chase to second and third place is quite significant now because Chase is at 40.25 million, and then Justin Jefferson's at 35, and then CD Lamb's at 34. I guarantee you Pickens side not even considering 35 million at this point. So the question becomes, does he want to become the highest paid wide receiver in the league? And you have to think that that's going to be the aim for that side with Pickens and his agent.
Not to get in the weeds, I want to make this a shorter show, but you don't think do you think he'll actually get there? I think he's going to even come under Lamb. I don't think he'll even beat CD's number.
I'll be surprised if he doesn't beat it.
You think it'll be Chase's number?
I I won't be surprised. Yeah, I mean that's why you play this game. Yeah.
I think he's gonna come in around, I don't know, 32, 33.
I think he
Probably
comes
right under
in at
CD.
is there another wide receiver that's even going to during the offseason threaten a highest paid wide receiver?
I don't believe so. I feel like they all got paid last year,
All
but
right.
I haven't looked.
Then I I will he hit 41? I think 41 is the number if we're being honest here.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like there's still some baggage, still some concerns with Pickens, and that's gonna be a little bit of leverage play in Dallas's favor, where I think it's gonna come in around 33.5.
Now obviously the guaranteed money and the
Sure.
fully guaranteed is part of the conversation. I think he's going to unequivocally want to top CD Lamb's guaranteed money amount, which I think was 60, fully guaranteed amount, which was 67. I think he's probably going to want to top uh the real measurement here, because if you look at the deal that Jamar Chase signed, it was 73.9 fully guaranteed, even though his average yearly value is the tops in the NFL. I think he's going to want to top the 88.7 that Jefferson got, and top the 40.25. He's going to want to top both those numbers, I think. Not only the average per year, but the fully guaranteed amount as well, too. The fully guaranteed will end up being probably more of a stickler for this thing getting done than the actual average per year. I think without question, he gets the average. He becomes the league's highest paid wide receiver. The question is where does he slot in as the fully guaranteed winner?
Mhm. Yeah, he's gonna want all those things. Question is, can you get all those things? My prediction, and it's off the cuff, and who knows? I'm just doing this from afar, but he'll be right under CD's average yearly value, probably match the fully guaranteed, and be the fourth highest paid receiver in the NFL.
All right. Well, look, the cap is at least expected to go up a little more than 8% jump this year. So, and that number could be closer to, I think, 9 by the time we get there to the actual number there. So, inflation, buddy.
Yeah,
And
fair,
look
fair,
and look
fair.
and Georgia obviously fits well in that offense, and it would be easily expected to be one of the top wide receivers in the NFL, if not the top wide receiver when it comes to yardage and catches and potentially even touchdowns. So he's going to want to get paid like that.
Yeah, I get it. We'll see what happens. Should be interesting, but can watch it all from afar. Dave, last thing I have on the agenda today, just have my article, as I do with every sort of big coaching hire, especially the coordinators. Did one on Patrick Graham last week, did one on new Steelers offensive coordinator Brian Angelico. Today, the big book of Brian Angelico, a deep dive into his background from his days in upstate New York, coaching at D3 Ithaca for a decade, to moving up into the NFL and now hired by Pittsburgh as the team's new OC, going into the coaching philosophy. Did find one coaching clinic from Angelico, coaching a duo run scheme. And so just kind of talk about his background, so you guys can go check it out on the site.
All right, what is your main takeaway of Angelico, where he can help this team as not the official play caller?
Yeah, I mean, he's an experienced coach. He's been around some great coaches. We talked about the, tree with Kevin O'Connell, where they worked together in Cleveland and Washington. And then, of course, O'Connell hired him in Minnesota. But he's also learned from some guys that might be a little less obvious, whether that's George De Leon, who was a longtime college coach that was really formative in Angelico's early years whenever De Leon was at Syracuse. You talk about Bill Callahan. He mentioned him in the clinic, coaching with him in Washington, the really well-regarded offensive line coach. This guy can certainly teach fronts and run scheme and blocks, and that's kind of maybe his strength. So even though he had the passing game coordinator title, I felt like his strength and background's a little bit stronger in the run game, given that he's been an offensive line coach and he's coached tight ends, which of course touches all parts of the offense, but just kind of seemed like his background was a little bit stronger in the run game. But really high energy, intense dude. That's kind of his reputation. Even listen to this clinic, which was virtual. It was held during the COVID year. This guy's like passionate and intense and really commanding. So probably a voice that'll be easy to hear on the field whenever the team goes out to training camp.
All right, when looking back between the other candidate that they had. How do you feel about them going with Angelico other than the Saints candidate?
Tolzien, yeah, I still like Tolzien, obviously. So who would I have preferred if I had done a deep dive into Tolzien? I'm not sure. I can understand the allure of Angelico because of that experience, because of that maybe differing background to somebody a little more run game, front minded. Maybe there's something there, and obviously has some Pitt ties himself. Actually, interesting. His first ever, well, not his first ever, but at Pitt, where he was a tight ends coach for a long time. He was the OC for the final game in 2010, I think it was 2010 and 2011, after Dave Wanstead and the Panthers parted ways. Signetti, who's now on Pittsburgh staff, Frank Signetti Jr., had already left to Rutgers, and so that left a lot of holes in the coaching staff. So Angelico called the offense for the BVAA Compass Bowl against Kentucky, in which Pitt won 27-10, had a really good offensive showing. So that was kind of one of his first offensive coordinator jobs at the FBS level. He was a longtime OC at Ithaca in D3 there. So all that to say, he's an experienced guy, pretty well regarded, it seems like. So it'll be hard to quantify his impact, obviously, not being the play caller, but there's certainly plenty to like about Brian Angelico.
Yeah, and as I've mentioned too, the fact that he is primarily concentrated on the tight end position for most of the time or all the time really, that he's been in the NFL outside of being the pass game coordinator with the Vikings the last few years. He's had that slash tight ends designation along with that title there. This is a guy that hopefully should help the tight ends room.
Yeah, certainly. I think he can offer an impact. I still expect Pittsburgh to hire a tight ends coach, a dedicated one, not have Angelico pull double duty, but that is still the one vacant spot on the coaching staff. And I think Mark Cabaldi made a reference to the team's kind of trying to wait for a guy to become available before hiring him. So we're still waiting on word of who that guy might be.
All right.
All right, Dave, any other final thoughts? If not, we can get to some reader emails and close out today's show.
All right. Let's see. We both had Seattle winning. That happened. We both had Patriots plus the points. That did not come through. I thought the Patriots would put up a little better fight than they did offensively. That did not come in. And I think, what was the over-under, did we say on this? I think
4.5.
no,
I'm sorry, over under 45.
And
you had the under, I had the
right.
over, so you were proven correct. I think whatever it was.
All right. Okay. Anything else from the Super Bowl game? I guess not. We can get into some reader emails here. I believe we got a little bit of conversation about the question that we threw out the other day. Let's start with Paul Lutz. He says, I would not trade my whole draft class for Mendoza. If all we needed was a quarterback, then I could see that argument, but we need too much else. Our defense is aging out, and we need kids to develop in those roles. We also need high draft pick wide receiver to pair with DK. So no, I don't think we would be worth it. I think there are too many other needs.
I put that poll out, and I think most people said they would not do, but there were some people fighting your good fight over there saying, no, this is actually a really good idea because half these picks are day 3 picks, and so they're not really that valuable. So sure, go ahead and trade the whole haul.
And a lot of my, look, people look. Realistically, is it people ask us all the time about hypotheticals, and normally we shy away from it. And one time you go into hypotheticals, people lose their absolutely mind.
Probably stay away from them, to be honest.
Do I think that this team would actually even consider something like that? No, obviously. But I mean, if push came to shove and you asked my opinion on it, that was my opinion. I'm a huge Mendoza fan. We're never going. It's going to take 3 years to finally probably get a good idea whether or not Mendoza is going to be a type quarterback that can compete year in, year out for a championship. And obviously the Raiders, if they end up taking him, they've got a tough situation in there of trying to reset everything once again. They got a good running back over there. What else do the Raiders have? They're probably going to lose, or feels like they might lose Crosby. So
they got Brock Bowers. That's an offensive piece to lean on. It might even take longer than 3 years. Look at Sam Darnold, class of 2018. If you would have asked 3 years after his career where he was at, it's a much different answer compared to today. So quarterback careers can be a long arc.
But I don't think I fared well on Twitter, especially after what did the poll come in? It was like 75-25 or something like that.
Thereabouts. But there were some people definitely saying, like, they should do this. Like, there were the replies were, I think, more balanced compared to the actual vote total, which was slanted towards no, don't do this, which is really, I expected probably no, because it's a big ask there to give up the entire class.
I think someone else says Dave went full Cleveland Browns. Never go full Cleveland Browns. And there were a couple other ones, some language I don't think I can even use on this show. When it comes to people think Dave's law. Look, I expected to get that kind of pushback overall. It's kind of unorthodox opinion on something that very rarely even comes close to happening, where you trade a full draft like that to move up to get one quarterback. But I just thought it was a fun hypothetical, with nothing else to kind of talk about. And that was my thoughts on it. But I don't think anybody has to worry about this team trading their entire draft class or more to move up to number one to get Mendoza. Paul Lutz also has another email in here. Super Bowl precedents. Hello, gentlemen. Fantastic jobs as always. While I'm sad that the Steelers didn't get to play in the Super Bowl, I'm excited because of your draft coverage is my favorite part of the show. But this question goes more toward Steeler history and Mike McCarthy. Every Steelers coach in the Super Bowl era has taken them to at least two Super Bowls. Every Steelers coach in the Super Bowl era has taken them to at least two Super Bowls. Do you think McCarthy can keep that precedent? Let's assume he finishes at his 5-year contract that extends for another 3 years after that.
No, going to be real hard. That timeline's a lot shorter for McCarthy than it was for Tomlin and Cowher and Noel. So 2 Super Bowls in, let's just call it even a decade of coaching, hypothetically, with the roster where it's at right now. That is a big ask that is hard to expect. Of course, Cowher didn't get to 2 until very late in his career. Tomlin did it early. Noel did it pretty early. But for McCarthy in this day and age, going to be a real challenge.
If McCarthy gets this team to 1 Super Bowl during his tenure in Pittsburgh, I think it will be quite an accomplishment. And look, this team's got to find this. The onus on him is to find the next franchise quarterback. We've established that several times, and that's you just don't go out to the orchard and pluck one off of the tree. That's kind of another reason why I thought why plays into my opinion of why not take a shot on a guy like Mendoza, even if you got the opportunity to do such. Once again, do I think that's going to happen? No. And as we've said before about the future, you look right now at the 2027 draft class, it looks very appealing, but it seems like every year we have these conversations. Oh, look at this draft class. Look at all the quarterbacks that are going to fall out of it. You got 2/3 through the college football season, and you got guys that a lot of people some people were talking about Mendoza coming over from Cal to Indiana, but I mean, how many people really envision Mendoza not only having the season that he had, but to play as well as he did in the big games, and not only that, lead this team to a national championship. I mean, really, kind of the Burrow. I think the roots of what Mendoza had on tape at Cal was certainly there. But what I'm getting at here, and look at the start that Arch Manning had with Texas last year, and that he was able to obviously make progress as the season went on. And you look at all these guys in the draft class, people are trying to circle is, man, they're going to be 5 first-round draft picks. Will it actually get there or not?
Yeah, I still compare Mendoza's arc more to Cam Ward than Joe Burrow, because Burrow was just a 1-year starter. Mendoza had been playing for a while and just kind of came on scene with the way that Cam Ward, after transferring schools and ending up at Miami, and then kind of went from, maybe he'll be in the mix to, this is going to be the top dude. And so that's kind of the Mendoza arc there. But got to find that quarterback, no question about that.
All right, buddy, Deshaun Campbell writes in, No, in capital letters. I would not give all that for Fernando. Dave, your take is insane, saying that he's better than Caleb Williams. Compare the Heisman season alone, and you got your answers. He says Fernando, in capital letters, is a player who threw for over 300 yards one time. He's had one good season. That's a very small sample size to already put him in the Lawrence or Burrow category. So Deshaun Campbell thinks I am insane to even compare him to Caleb Williams. Let's see how Caleb does now after, once again, we've seen these quarterbacks come in the league, not be great at we're rookies, have a very nice second season, and then can they follow it up? Now he's got great coaching over there. He's got some weapons and all. I don't think we should expect a Caleb drop off, but I'll tell you what, Caleb performed better than what I thought he would in his second season.
Yeah, I thought him and Ben Johnson worked together really well. So I still kind of, again, put him, he's not in the Lawrence luck camp. And I'm not even sure he was at Burrow whenever Burrow came out in terms of how Mendoza's viewed. I should check myself. Actually, Burrow was kind of a 2-year starter at LSU. I forgot about that. Just that year before was so forgotten. It really kind of was that 1-year breakout year, that last season in 2019. But anyway, he's going to the Raiders, as Dave said, which is a pure hypothetical. Just wanted to kind of take temperature. And to me, it was less of a referendum on the rest of the roster and just how do you feel about Mendoza? Because if I felt Mendoza was a luck or even Trevor Lawrence, as Lawrence was perceived coming out of Clemson, I would be with you, Dave. I would trade the entire class. If I felt so strongly this was going to be a generational type of dude, then I would do that. I just don't know if I feel that strongly or strongly enough about Mendoza to make that move.
I mean, you have said in the past before, if they think that this is their guy, that they should go get him at all costs, whoever the quarterback is.
Right. Now, that generally hasn't meant trading your entire draft class. It's
Right.
usually meant something a little less heavy than that. But point is, if he's your guy, then go get your guy. So I'm not against the idea in principle, but it just felt like Mendoza was not the right dude to make that move for.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Dave McKee, also on the nose side. He says, I appreciate the continued quality content. Keep up the good work. No, I would not give up the entirety of the draft class to get Mendoza. Not that I don't think he could become the guy, so to speak, as I do like him as a prospect, but we have too many needs and still too much age to worry about replacing. I'm not opposed to Alex's offer, though. What was your offer? He says, if I was a front office, I'd be calling the Bengals and trading this year's first TJ Watt and Jalen Ramsey for Joe Burrow. I could be convinced to give up a little bit more, but not much more. Anything much more for either. I'm riding with Will Heyward as I see him as the potential guy that Dave describes Mendoza as. Maybe not a top 5 guy, but a top 20 or 15 for sure. Thanks again, Dave McKee. Here's the thing. How, even if we're going to play the hypothetical of acquiring Joe Burrow, Mike Brown really going to trade Joe Burrow to the Steelers?
No, not going to happen.
And to me, it would be kind of suicide if they if he took on Watt and Jalen Ramsey as part of that, in addition to this year's first round draft pick.
Yeah, they're not getting old players for your franchise quarterback in division.
All right, so I mean, I get the whole if Joe Burrow's available type thing, looking into it, but I just think and I think Joe Burrow's come back and kind of backed himself down to being a frustrated guy, and does he really want to leave Chase and Higgins and the things that he's got going on right now, at least weaponry wise?
But what has it gotten him? It's not gotten him
Sure.
enough. I mean, he's not going to demand a trade, and certainly the Bengals are not going to have any interest in trading him. So he's going to be back as a Bengal in 26, and that's all that really matters in my mind.
All right, the whole thing about the Will Heyward thing, I was thinking a little bit more about too, and the thing when you're dealing with higher pedigree, higher drafting quarterbacks is the rope, or so to speak, is a little bit longer to deal with. Would we you look at situations with obviously like Brock Purdy, and you go all the way back to Tom Brady, and who else has been a late round uh, guy that has hung on in the NFL.
I mean, Dak, I wouldn't call a late round guy, a mid round guy,
Right.
but I mean, he's not certainly a first round pick.
What I'm getting at here is the window with these guys, let's say taken outside of the fourth round, is very, very small for opportunity once they get on the field to make their hay and give teams enough confidence that that can be the guy moving forward. If Brady had come in and just been so with the Patriots, they would have went another direction quickly. The same with Brock Purdy in San Francisco. It's easier to jump off of a late round guy with, let's say, 10 to 12 starts than it is to jump off of a first round, or even really, I guess, a second round draft pick, but more notably a first round draft pick, because odds are pretty good that if that quarterback was just so for you as a late round guy in limited action, and let's say a half of one season, maybe the start of next season, it's a lot easier. You're probably drafting a lot earlier. Anyway, it is just easier to go away from those late round guys and say, he's been so far. Yeah, there's some things to build upon, but we only got a 6th round draft pick. The window for those guys to make their mark, I guess what I'm getting at, for quarterbacks drafted after the fourth round, is just so small that they really have to stick out to be able to give teams confidence that could be their guy. And
Yeah, it's just reality.
it's reality. It's common sense. It's not
Hmm.
some earth shattering conclusion that I come to. So look, obviously, if Aaron Rodgers comes back and is this team's starting quarterback, the opportunity for Will Howard to see the field will be dictated by either injury to Aaron Rodgers, and this even assumes that Will Howard gets the number 2 role out of camp, or even by the first quarter of the season. And the only other opportunity, if Aaron Rodgers is not injured, is if this team is out of the playoff picture with a third of the season left, and you're thinking, all right, well, we know Aaron Rodgers, this is the end of the line for him. Let's at least get a look at Will Howard. And even at that point, what can Will Howard show you with the team? Probably not overly talented overall in the final, let's say, even 6 games of the regular season, to give you enough confidence that, oh yeah, we can definitely build on this. We won't even think about drafting a first round quarterback in
Hmm.
2027. So, that it's just the fact of the matter that he's not a high pedigree guy. And when and if Will Howard sees any time in, let's say, 2026, it's got to be very above average for this team to lean into him, right?
Right. And oh, yeah, it's going to be his first NFL in stadium snaps, or at least among them. Of course, he hopes to play in the preseason this year, so there's also his own growing pains to work out. So it's a tough, narrow path. It's not maybe fair to Will Howard, but when you're a 6th round pick, it's not about being fair. It's just about getting a chance and trying to do your best to capitalize on it.
For those of you, and look, I've been on record saying that if they're not going to draft a quarterback early this year, my druthers would be to see as much Will Howard as you can see. And look, obviously, if Aaron Rodgers comes back, I'm not going to get that wish there. But even for those of you that are like me, that would potentially like to see this team lean into Will Howard, what exactly do you have to see? What does that got to look like for you as a fan to think, okay, well, regardless of where this team ends in 2026, what does Will Howard's showing have to be to give you confidence that this team should not attack the quarterback position early in 2027 draft?
Yeah, it would take a lot, obviously, but we'll talk about that next year.
All right. Let's see if we got any more emails within here. No, we got the Lenny Barsikowski one, got the Rob. Yeah, I think we got through. Surprisingly, we didn't get a lot of. I think most of it came on Twitter. The conversation about the whole Mendoza trade and all like that. We didn't get a lot of feedback. No, it was obviously Super Bowl weekend and kind of a slow weekend overall here. How would you rate that? Rate it's not obviously not going to be one of the most memorable Super Bowls ever. There. Were you okay seeing a defensive game overall?
Yeah, I don't mind that. I think it was fun to see the defense. You maybe don't want that every single year. You want a good mix and flavors of how these games go. How memorable it will be. It's going to be uh, just
Down there.
average. I don't know. It wasn't like terrible. I thought there was some intrigue with it with the defensive play, but it was probably if you had to rank it, you'd probably be putting it bottom quarter or so.
I mean, thankfully the Patriots had that answered that touchdown at 19-0, or else that really would have been a snoozer.
Mhm.
At least they made you wonder, maybe can they at least cover?
It was that kind of Super Bowl. Yeah, can they
Yeah.
cover Super Bowl?
All right, Alex, you and I will get back after this on Wednesday. We hope to have kind of a roundtable session. At least that's the plan right now for Wednesday with Ross McCorkle, Joe Clark, Josh Carney, and Melanie Friedlander going over what they observed at the All-Star game, Senior Bowl, and Shrine Bowl game. We like to usually have those kind of roundtables this time of year, and Wednesday kind of sets up perfectly, barring anything extraordinary happening news-wise with the Steelers. So that's the plan, at least as we sit here right now on this Monday. So in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate, SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button. Also, if you'd like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button, which I think I got some feedback that for some reason maybe that sign up page isn't loading. I will get with our developers today to see what's going on with maybe this sign up page on the ad free section. So my apologies on that. But until, let's see, emails terriblepodcast@gmail.com. And once again, our plan is to have a draft roundtable discussion on the Wednesday show. So until then, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.